morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ and welcome back to another detailed forecast update for November 12th, 2024. We've got a lot to get through today, including those storms that are still piping up across parts of southeastern Queensland. We'll talk about some storms expected out into the central parts of Queensland as well, and some heavy rainfall now on the cards for parts of New South Wales and Queensland. I'll give a tropical weather update as well, and we'll just touch again on that hot weather that's extending through central parts of Australia. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. And if you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. The support lately has been much appreciated, but let's get stuck straight into things over in Queensland. Lots of showers and storms and a lot of rainfall fell last night, especially around the Bow Desert and Boonah area, where over 125mm was reported in the last 12 hours. A huge amount of rainfall, and even more rainfall is on the cards for today from these severe thunderstorms. Incredible falls as well along the Queensland and New South Wales border, once again between 90mm and 120mm for some of these locations as 1 hourly rainfall totals, and then again up towards 125mm for the last 12 hours. There's some incredible rainfall accumulations there once again, and that has pushed rivers into the moderate flooding areas. Now, that is a lot of bad news in terms of the rainfall overnight. However, the good news is that those rivers are now finally starting to fall. A lot of those rivers still running at that minor to moderate flooding alert at this time, but I do reckon that they will continue to fall from this time onwards. And unless we get some very heavy rainfall tonight, which is possible across some of these locations, but not overly likely, the flooding should subside pretty much completely from here on out. But yeah, in terms of rainfall tonight, certainly not going to be as much as yesterday, but in terms of the forecast, we're still staring down some severe thunderstorms. We'll see showers and storms blow up along the Gold Coast and then further inland out towards Boonah and Bow Desert over this pretty small pocket of southeastern Queensland. In fact, these thunderstorms really not extending much further inland than about Dalby and Toowoomba, and definitely no further south than about Yamba and Grafton into the northeast of New South Wales. So all in all, a pretty isolated outbreak of thunderstorms expected tonight across parts of Queensland and New South Wales. But these thunderstorms here forecast to fire up from around midday onwards into about 2 p.m. when they will be at their strongest, before slowly easing off as the evening draws closer. Thunderstorms should pretty much clear out of the Gold Coast area by around 6 or 7 p.m. and then out of Brisbane by around 8 or 9 p.m. tonight. Those thunderstorms unlikely to be severe later on into the night. However, earlier on in the night, especially along the Queensland-New South Wales border and then up towards the Gold Coast, maybe a little bit further inland towards the Scenic Rim, we will likely see a couple of severe thunderstorms here and there. They will be isolated and few and far between. We're not expecting a whole host of severe thunderstorms, and definitely not a massive swathe of them, but I reckon 2 or 3 severe thundercells with damaging winds, isolated pockets of medium to large sized hailstones, and some heavy and locally intense rainfall certainly is possible this afternoon and the evening around the Scenic Rim and inland from the Gold Coast. And the Gold Coast as well could pick up some healthy rainfall accumulations. I reckon the southern suburbs of Brisbane, especially around the Logan City area, could also have that chance of receiving severe thunderstorms, but Brisbane itself unlikely to pick up anything substantial tonight, and then out towards Toowoomba as well, unlikely to get anything significant. But as we have seen over the last couple of days, severe thunderstorms can and will pop up out of nowhere, so it is better to be safer than sorry and just take a look at every aspect of this forecast. Also a chance of storms north of the Sunshine Coast, north of Mount Perry and up towards Edith's Void and Billawheeler, and some thunderstorms as well, possible to extend out towards Hervey Bay and Bundaberg later on tonight, but they will be few and far between up there, and more likely than not they will miss these locations, Bundaberg and Hervey Bay. But again, a chance of rainfall up there. Showers and storms also expected later on this afternoon and evening out towards Rolleston, Injune and Taroom in Queensland's Thunderstorm Alley, and those thunderstorms will persist later on into the evening and before clearing out by around 9 or 10 o'clock tonight, before tomorrow's round of severe thunderstorms comes through, but we'll touch on that in just a few moments. Certainly looking like another bad setup for Queensland in terms of thunderstorms. They could certainly get some pretty significant ones tonight. Some gnarly storms are expected on the way, and that is once again thanks to the high levels of humidity sitting inland, the warm temperatures as well. Queensland southeast expecting all round another warm day today, kept even warmer by those humidity values, and a favourable wind setup as well, with some onshore winds expected coming in from the Coral Sea and the Tasman Sea as well, and then some winds coming in from central parts of Australia, bringing that warm dry air, perfect for those thunderstorms to fire up, and it will all coincide in the southeastern pocket of Queensland. Once again, some great convective available potential energy values, most likely to peak at around this afternoon before around about 2 or 3 p.m, which means those thunderstorms will happen earlier on in the afternoon compared to normal, before those values drop off by later on this evening. But still some good values expected inland. These thunderstorms will likely be long-lived, at least lasting an hour or so across these parts of Queensland, and that will give them plenty of time to drop some very healthy rainfall accumulations, which will be interesting to see how some of those rivers and dams cope after their torrential downpours that they received last night. All in all, looking like a pretty potent setup for once again severe thunderstorms tonight. They should be cleared out by around 4 or 5 p.m. local time and transitioned into high precipitation non-severe thunderstorms. But again, we will have to wait and see on the radar, and the best prediction for these thunderstorms is just looking out the window and seeing what clouds are expected for your location at what time. They're very difficult to predict, these severe thunderstorms, and especially the ones that fire up in southeastern Queensland in November. They all have minds of their own, but the forecast does suggest a pretty potent setup for some of these storms here, and as such, we're definitely calling and expecting for some potent severe thunderstorms into the southeastern corner of Queensland later on this afternoon. Very interesting setup indeed. Let's take a look at the forecast for tomorrow and the week long. Just as a general outlook, you can see tomorrow we're expecting another round of some pretty good thunderstorms, some gnarly ones expected inland, north of the Queensland, New South Wales border rather, scrambling my states at this time, and then extending up towards Roma, Injune and Rolleston. Will likely see a very nice juicy outbreak of some severe thunderstorms out there, extending inland towards Charleville as well, powered by some very warm temperatures that are expected tomorrow into the early 40s for some locations of Queensland, and humid. That's going to be an awful day, that's for sure, out towards Injune and Rolleston. And some thunderstorms also expected into the southeastern pocket of Queensland by around 2 or 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, and they could pack a punch as well. Expecting some severe thunderstorms over the ranges outside of Brisbane and the Logan City area. The potential for some thunderstorms as well out towards Boonah and Beaudesert, just adding to the rainfall situation that they've got developing down there this morning. And some good thunderstorms also expected up towards Gympie and the Sunshine Coast just in general. A very nice outbreak of thunderstorms is expected Wednesday morning. Certainly something we'll take a great in-depth look at tomorrow morning. But yeah, in terms of a general forecast, thunderstorms expected out into the south central parts of Queensland outside of Injune and Roma, and then another outbreak of severe thunderstorms expected outside of Brisbane and then up towards Maroochydore on the Sunshine Coast. Certainly some of these storms could pack a punch tomorrow afternoon. They should keep themselves out of the way of the Gold Coast. For the most part, these thunderstorms look like they're going to have a bit more of an inland bias. So if you do live within about 30 or 40 kilometres of the coast, you're unlikely to receive the most severe of thunderstorms. But definitely locations further inland out towards Kingaroy and Gympie could get a walloping from some of these severe thunderstorms at around 5 or 6 p.m. tomorrow night. And then the second round comes through, the storms transition into a high precipitation squall mode. And then for Brisbane's western and northern suburbs, they'll likely receive a walloping in terms of rainfall by around 7 or 8 p.m, maybe even a little bit later than that, and then that rainfall extending up the Sunshine Coast up towards Maryborough, and then further north towards Harvey Bay, and some rainfall also possible tomorrow evening for parts of the central Queensland, the Capricorn district, out towards Rockhampton, Agnes Water, Gladstone and Bundaberg. A couple of showers and maybe a few rumbles of thunder possible, but again, I wouldn't get your hopes up, unfortunately, for tomorrow afternoon, the rainfall up there. And then yet again, another round of thunderstorms comes through for parts of southeastern Queensland very late on tomorrow night into early tomorrow morning. This one again looks like it could pack a punch. It looks like we're going to get a 2 a.m. rumbler coming through parts of Toowoomba and then into Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast. These thunderstorms here can notoriously be quite severe later on at night, so certainly something that we're going to need to take a great look at tomorrow morning in tomorrow morning's forecast update. But yeah, Thursday morning you might be waking to some large hailstones, a lot of lightning and some very heavy rainfall if you live in certain areas of Brisbane, but we will touch on that in tomorrow morning's forecast update. And what is driving tomorrow afternoon's thunderstorm forecast? Well, it is of course the convective available potential energy. Some huge values are expected, giving the instability required for these thunderstorms to make the most of their environment, and there is a great setup. Like I said, warm temperatures, high humidity values, plenty of instability and great wind shear in the environment, and the convective available potential energy values, which are about 50% higher than normal across this part of southeastern and south central Queensland, is just that icing on the cake, the extra fuel for these thunderstorms to make the most of, and will be the edge that these thunderstorms need to transition into severe storms. And you can see high values expected across parts of central Queensland outside of Roma and Injune, typically what I would class as high as orange, and you can see there is a wide swathe of orange values and then into those reds and maroons, which I class as very high values across this part of Queensland, and that will give way to some pretty nice severe thunderstorm scenarios tomorrow, and some big severe thunderstorm values as well, some big convective available potential energy values as well on Thursday, which will of course give round to another outbreak of severe thunderstorms. Fortunately though, it looks like the temperatures might be a little bit cooler on Thursday. They're only going up into the early 30s for parts of inland Queensland as opposed to the high 30s or early 40s, and that might just prevent a big severe thunderstorm outbreak on Thursday at this time. Thunderstorms however will continue through Thursday and then into Friday. Those warm temperatures keeping the thunderstorms around in central Queensland on Friday, but it looks like southeastern Queensland after Thursday morning should get a couple of days of drier weather as opposed to just thunderstorms blowing through parts of southeastern Queensland every single night. But those thunderstorms pretty persistent around central parts of Queensland through Saturday, and then Sunday it looks like we're going to get another very nasty outbreak powered by a low pressure system and a surface trough being dragged across parts of New South Wales and then into southeastern Queensland. It looks like a big squall line is expected Sunday night. We're going to have to talk about this in greater detail probably on about Friday or Saturday when we know more details about it. But yeah, some pretty heavy falls possible on Sunday, and then by extension into Monday and Tuesday as well, with some more thunderstorms possible behind that system, but unlikely to come into fruition just looking at this forecast here. And then a couple of days next week after around Monday and Tuesday the 18th and 19th of November, a couple of days of drier weather without thunderstorms for Queensland and New South Wales, which I imagine a few people are going to really be hanging out for by this weekend, just after the outbreak of severe thunderstorms that we're going to see on pretty much every single day this week. So I guess that is a little bit of good news. Those thunderstorms that we were talking about happening on Monday and Tuesday, the 18th and 19th of November respectively, it doesn't look like they're going to come into fruition now. It looks like Sunday steals literally all of southeastern Queensland's thunder for a good couple of days. Just with this outbreak of severe storms here, that definitely looks like it's going to pack a punch, and it is reciprocated amongst other forecast models as well. So certainly something that I'm going to take a look at in a future forecast update. And if you want to see updates on that system, then make sure you are subscribed to the channel. There's no better way to get up-to-date notifications on the weather than by subscribing to this channel. And yeah, that basically does it for our thunderstorm forecast for southeastern Queensland, but we're not done with southeastern Queensland yet. Rainfall and rainfall as a whole for parts of New South Wales and Queensland is high over the next 10 days. A lot of it did fall last night. I did highlight the possibility of accumulations up towards 100 millimetres, and we did see accumulations in excess of 100 millimetres for some locations, especially around Bow Desert, and more rainfall expected to fall over the next 10 days. Quite a lot of it will fall, potentially 50 to 80 millimetres of it expected tonight across parts of the inner suburbs of Brisbane, further inland out towards Toowoomba. I think 80 millimetres might be a little bit high considering the setup, but certainly some locations expecting between 25 and 50 millimetres. And then tomorrow afternoon, that 50 to 80 millimetres does look possible. Thursday and Friday will likely be a little bit dry just because of the nature of thunderstorms, but then Sunday we'll see a return to some very wet weather, and you can see the majority of the rainfall forecast for southeastern Queensland over the next 10 days does fall before Monday morning on the 18th, which does mean that this is going to be thunderstorm focused rainfall. We're not expecting just an onshore flow of showers, but for the most part some very good rainfall accumulations expected across southeastern Queensland. Brisbane expecting some good falls up towards 60 or 70 millimetres, which I think is a very good number for Brisbane over the next 5 days. The Gold Coast expecting up to 40, which might be on the lower side just considering what's expected to blow up tonight, but again that is a pretty good number for a forecast. And then further inland out towards Toowoomba, I think this is definitely on the lower side, but 70 or 80 millimetres over the next 10 days. I reckon a better number for Toowoomba over the next 5 to 10 days would probably be closer to about 130 or 140 millimetres. And some good falls also making themselves at home out towards Rolleston, Emerald, Roma, Claremont, and even inland towards Charleville as well. Some good falls possible out there over the next 10 days. Rockhampton and parts of the Queensland coastline as well, especially with the rainfall that's expected to pipe up into the early parts of next week. We're seeing rainfall accumulations between 50 and 60 millimetres. They're pretty widespread, even extending up towards Mackay, which is fantastic news indeed. Those locations hanging out for some rainfall at this time. So that will be some great news. Again, we will need to wait and see what the forecast actually does suggest, especially into the early parts of next week where the majority of this rainfall is expected. But the heads up is quite a good amount of rainfall is expected there. Not enough to break their drought-like conditions, but certainly enough to give them a good soaking and a bit of hope that some rainfall does actually exist outside of southeastern Queensland. So that is some great news for them, and also some good falls expected into parts of New South Wales. They're expecting a pretty beefy thunderstorm outbreak both tonight and tomorrow, especially into the northeast of the state. And then tomorrow night we're expecting a pretty widespread severe thunderstorm outbreak across the eastern half of New South Wales, and then even extending into southeastern parts of Victoria. Some good thunderstorms possible down there. What a mean picture for parts of Eastern Australia as well. A huge line of severe thunderstorms possible tomorrow, and a huge line of thunderstorms just expected in general across Eastern Australia. Typical weather for this time of the year, but certainly going to be packing a punch, that's for sure, for some locations. In terms of 10-day rainfall accumulations for the tropics, nothing has changed from yesterday's forecast, but that rainfall still is teasing far northern Queensland up towards Cairns and into the Daintree rainforest. Unfortunately, the rainfall there just isn't wanting to break in November by the looks of things. The GFS model does suggest that onshore flow still from what we were talking about in yesterday's forecast. It has backed it down, unfortunately, but it looks like an onshore flow might pipe up into the later parts of November, bringing some much needed rainfall to Queensland's far north. But again, I wouldn't be getting my hopes up. That's just me really fishing for something to talk about for far northern Queensland. But in terms of a rainfall forecast up there, it's looking pretty disappointing over the next 10 days, and it's just going to add to the drought conditions that they're experiencing, especially along the Cassowary Coast and inland to the Atherton tablelands. The rainfall they're getting desperate out there. They really do need the rainfall, and they are on water restrictions at this time still, as they have been for the last couple of months. It is normal for far northern Queensland to get a couple of months of really dry, like bone dry weather in October, November, and even into early December. But I mean, the extent of the dry weather right now is getting a little bit concerning, and they do desperately need some rainfall to really moisten things up and get those rivers topped up and those dams topped up. However, again, we're not exactly begging for 300 millimeters or so. That certainly can stay well out to sea. Showers and storms were pretty prevalent across parts of South Australia and the Northern Territory over the last couple of nights as well, and there are going to be more showers and storms over the coming couple of days across interior parts of Western Australia. The southwest corner could also receive a couple of showers and storms later on this week, just in time for the weekend. But yeah, certainly looking like a bit more of a stormy and unstable period heading over for Western Australia, being powered by those very warm temperatures that they're currently seeing. Marble Bar expecting a top of 45 degrees on Thursday. Showers and storms making themselves welcome across parts of southwest and Western Australia by this weekend, and some warm temperatures just in general expected across parts of the southwest and into the interior region for the remainder of this week, and then into early next week. We'll see temperatures up into the early to mid 30s for some of these locations, and maybe the high 30s for parts of the wheat belt. Certainly things starting to warm up, and it is starting to feel and look a lot more like summer, both outside and also on the forecast models, which I know is getting a lot of people excited across Perth and parts of Western Australia as a whole. Anyways, that is all that I have time for in today's forecast update. I am hoping that my update schedule doesn't change over the next 7 days. I'm heading over to Queensland for a little trip, flying over tonight, so hopefully those thunderstorms don't impede on the flight. Fingers crossed there, but I am hoping that I'm still able to churn out content every single day, so nothing should change. But again, I will be in a completely different state. Those videos might be pumped out 2 or 3 hours early, who knows. But that is all for me today. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. The names are on screen right now. I could not run this show without them, and again, their support is much appreciated. But that is all for me today, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Goodbye.